everyone. Welcome back to The Field Between, the only podcast allowed at Al-Azhar.
I like that. I'm Yasmin.
I'm Ahmed. What do we have on the agenda for today?
First, I have to say a quick RIP to the pod that never made it out. We recorded an episode. We recorded
a secret lost episode.
And we can't tell you what was in it.
No, it's behind a paywall. So it's going up, but you have to pay $5,000 to listen to it.
Yes. It's the only episode we've ever recorded and not posted, I think, which is pretty good given that we've been doing this for a few years now.
Yeah. We recorded it. It's just now so much has happened in a week. It's a little stale.
Yeah. We like to keep things fresh.
We're nothing if not a breaking news podcast.
True.
And if we don't get the news on time, then
we just don't get it. Yeah.
We just don't get it. We have to stay fresh. People come to us to know what's going on in the world.
That's true. How are we doing?
We can't give them stale news or else they'll get confused.
Yeah, you're right. How are we doing in our personal news? What's new with us?
Well, I just took a little pill, so I'm a little sleepy. Which I feel like has probably been the case the last couple of times we've recorded, but
yeah, you're having some back pain.
Otherwise, I don't know, just doing interviews.
You've been doing a lot of interviews, which is great, so fingers crossed.
Not that many. I mostly have recruiters reaching out and then backing away or ghosting me.
That counts. No, but
like I told you today, someone reached out about a role. They were like, hey, we think you'd be great for this role. And we set up a call for 3:30, and then 5 minutes before 3:30, she was just like, "Oh, the role's been closed."
That's
like,
absolutely
canceled.
Wild. I can't believe the job market is in that state. That's really crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I think we were talking the other day. I think what's happening is just that all these companies bloated themselves up and they overhired, and then they overpaid specifically for some tech roles. And also during COVID, people were working remotely, and it felt like people were generally able to get better working conditions, at least in tech. And now the companies are just kind of coming back with a vengeance.
Empire strikes back.
Yeah, so they're really trying to discipline their workforces. They've been having all these layoffs, like Microsoft just laid off 6,000 people. LinkedIn, like all these massive companies are laying off people. And I think they're trying to avoid crashing their stock prices. They're saying that they're restructuring so that they can be more competitive on the AI front. I think what's actually happening is that they realize that they are likely overpaying for some of these roles, and that they bloated themselves up a little too much. And they're probably going to rehire some of these people with less flexible working conditions for less money. And I think they can do that. I think they can make people desperate and then get a much better deal in the end.
We've also seen a lot of these roles kind of going abroad, which is interesting because I feel like it's following, obviously, an established trend of like manufacturing jobs going abroad. Yeah, just something to kind of adjust to. You said people got laid off from LinkedIn. That's so awkward. What do you post on LinkedIn if you got laid off from LinkedIn? That sounds like a nightmare.
I don't know. I mean, if you got laid off from LinkedIn, you're probably fine because that's one of those
big names
on your resume.
It's just so funny and kind of meta, but yeah. Other updates, we are headed to Western Mass this weekend. We're stopping in New York for a day on either end, day and a half on the first end for my little cousin's graduation.
Yeah. We're doing a pod meetup in New York.
Oh yeah? With whom?
Tickets are $5,000.
We are not doing a pod.
If you want to come meet us.
5,000 is your magic number. No, we're not doing a pod meetup because we're celebrating our 3-year anniversary on Friday.
Oh, yeah.
Which will be very fun. And while we love you all.
So if you want to come to our 3-year anniversary, tickets are $5,000.
We do not want to celebrate with you. So I'm really excited for that.
Really? Not even if someone was like, I'll give you $5,000?
Nah, if they said $5,000 for sure, I would do it.
Okay. Yeah, so there you go. There's the price.
Absent that, I think we're going to go solo.
What are we doing?
We are going to walk around. You wanted to walk around the little like island on the west side?
Yeah, I wanted island time.
Some island time. And then we are having a very late dinner, but at a place that's supposed to be excellent. So I'm excited.
Very late? How late is it?
9:45.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's too late. What time does the restaurant close?
I think it stops admitting new people at 10. So 9:45 is the latest reservation.
We're going to get the worst food.
All of this, I have to say, was vetted with you multiple times, so you signed off on it.
They're just going to give us whatever they have left over.
It's like a really fancy Persian small plates restaurant, so I think we'll be all right.
Oh.
But yeah, I'm excited. I've wanted to try it for a while, so it'll be fun.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm excited for my cousin's graduation. She's my pride and joy, so it'll be fun to see her graduate.
I thought I was your pride and joy.
You're right. You are my pride and joy. She's my
just because I'm unemployed.
Pride and joy.
She's your new pride and joy because she seems very employable.
She is. Pride and joy is something you say about kids. I feel like she's younger than me. You're just my joy, and I'm proud of you. But I wouldn't use that phrase, But I'm still proud of you.
I would say that about you.
You'd say I'm your pride and joy?
Yeah, of course.
Aw, that's so cute.
But not anymore. I guess you wouldn't say it about me, so.
Of course I would. I'm very proud.
I'm going to say the old ball and chain.
No,
3
don't.
years.
That makes me so sad. Don't say that.
I got 3 links on the chain.
I literally hate that. It makes me cringe so hard when people talk about their partners that way. It's like my worst fears in marriage and life.
It's a very boomer.
Yeah. But I feel like, honestly, even in our generation, people kind of talk that way. They just use different language.
I've never heard anyone our age say ball and chain. It's got to be updated for this.
Yeah. No, I've never heard them use that exact phrase, but I've heard that sentiment. Yeah.
Like
anyway, you are my pride and joy.
Keyboard or something. I don't know what you would say.
You are my pride and joy. I'm grateful to be with you, excited to celebrate.
Okay. Yes. Sorry, I had to plug in this thing. It was almost unplugged.
Oh. Yeah, I think those are... my other personal update is that I have foot pain that I'm trying to figure out. I think I have plantar fasciitis. Fasciitis, I think. Fasciitis.
So it's fascist feet.
Yeah, exactly. I was...
Of someone who does gardening.
Stricken by fasciitis. It's when you have painful inflammation in the thick band of tissue that runs from your heel to your toes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
how'd you get it? What were you doing? You're just stomping around town.
I would say a couple of things. One, some people are just more genetically predisposed to it. Both my parents have it, so it's not shocking that I got it. 2, some people, aka my mom and Ahmed, seem to think that I walk incorrectly.
Yes, you have a very violent walking pattern.
My mom doesn't say violent. She just says that I step on the outside or the inside of my foot. I don't know. And then 3, I wear shoes with no support whatsoever. So I think a combination of those 3 things conspired.
I don't think it's so much the lack of support because a lot of people wear minimalist shoes. I have some very minimalist shoes.
But yours are structured in a way that is I think if you wear ballet flats, it's not great for your feet.
Right. So, but what I'm saying is it's not the lack of support. It's the fact that it crunches your toes together.
I see.
Yeah.
It gives it a bad shape.
So if you don't crunch your toes together, then your foot is better able to use the muscles in it to provide that support naturally.
That actually makes sense based on what I've read. I would say I think though my ballet flats are so narrow in the toe that probably it is just kind of crushing it and forcing them to scrunch up. Sure. Yeah. I tend to also wear I like that I have small feet, and so I tend to wear the smallest size possible so that they look small or
interesting. So you've just been doing some form of foot biting.
Yeah, exactly. I'm between I'm a 7, but I often wear a 6.5 because I think it looks nicer.
That's crazy.
Really?
That's insane. No wonder why your feet hurt. That is insane.
I mean, it's been fine up until now. I'm 32.
No, that's
33.
awful. Hold on. I got shoes that were... Remember when I had to sell that pair of shoes that I bought? Mm-hmm. It's because they were a half size too small, and they killed my feet when I wore them.
I
couldn't even stand to wear them for I don't know, like a walk down the street.
Yeah,
they were awful.
I mean, most of my shoes are 7, but I have a couple like 6.5 that just like look really nice.
I had no idea you were wearing the wrong size shoe.
They're not
That's
wrong.
crazy.
They're just slightly tight, especially flats. They tend to expand, so it's like better to start tighter if you don't want them flapping around.
I'm in shock.
You're in shock.
That is a wild thing to do. Okay.
I also
we got to change that. We got to throw away all your 6.5 size shoes. That's crazy.
I don't even know if I have any right now. I also love ballet flats. I always have. They go like in and out of style, but I've always liked them, and I've always kept on wearing them, and they're really in style this summer. So the whole thing is deeply tragic, but anyway, I'll persevere.
I'm gonna start getting you some Peggy Hill size shoes. I'm gonna make you used to seeing big old clown feet when you look down there, and then when you wear the regular size shoe, like your actual size.
I'm about to order what I think look like clown shoes, so that'll be some good.
I showed you some ballet flats that look good.
No, those looked good, but I think based on my research, I want to start off with something with a lot of cushioning, and then once I'm not in pain at all, I'm going to switch over to the ones you told me about.
I think the cushion shoe is a sign of Western decadence, and I think it's
But
false.
My feet are in pain when I wake up, like before I even take a step, and so apparently they're pretty inflamed. But yeah. Gotta do what you gotta do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm open to them down the line for sure. They also just look much better than these, so that's appealing. All right, shall we get to the news?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
This is no transition from my feet to this topic, but I do feel compelled. So in our deleted episode, I talked quite a bit about India-Pakistan tensions. I'm going to give a really short overview at this point because it's no longer, thankfully, as relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But it just feels weird to not mention it on our podcast, I guess.
Sure.
Because it was stressful for a bit there, but essentially India and Pakistan traded back and forth a few rounds over Kashmir. What started off the incident initially was a terrorist attack in Kashmir, which really clearly targeted non-Muslims, which was really awful. But then India accused Pakistan of being behind the attack. And while historically that could maybe be an understandable accusation, there was they never provided evidence in this case, which is kind of like a wild thing to do when you are neighbors and both nuclear powers.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the thing that's interesting, I mean, one, it wasn't that interesting. It was just scary for all involved. Scary, obviously, because we have a lot of loved ones in Pakistan, and also scary just because these are two nuclear powers that are neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
India and Pakistan came into being in 1947 through partition. Formerly, it was all one British colonial territory, but Kashmir was never directly administered by the British. It was an Indian princely state, of which there were a couple. And in this case, it happened to have a Hindu leader, but it was Muslim majority. It's still Muslim majority today. And so at the time of partition, when India and Pakistan came into being as states, there's this kind of question of where should Kashmir go? And it was just never really figured out. I'm not the most well-educated on this issue. There definitely are people who are more well-educated, but I do strongly support a free Kashmir. That seems to make sense. They have kind of had their own path. And they're just kind of being used by both sides. So today, Kashmir is administered by both India, Pakistan, and also a tiny sliver by China. So yeah, I mean, even after India and Pakistan stopped striking each other proper, or doing things like having drones go over each side, they kept on striking the other side, just in terms of the other side's administrated area in Kashmir. And that's the kind of sad thing about these conflicts. I mean, this was the fourth war between India and Pakistan, and every time Kashmiris are the ones who suffer the most. And it is a little bit of a thing in the reporting where it's the fighting's dying down, but there are still Kashmiris who are dying. But again, thankfully, the ceasefire seems to have held for now. And even in Kashmir, there hasn't been additional fighting. Just to show and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are familiar with this, but it is so interesting just how highly biased reporting on this subject is from all sides, in a way that it makes it a little hard to kind of parse out what's happening. After the ceasefire was announced, so first of all, there isn't a ton of in-depth reportage. The Times did a decent job as far as I could tell, but it's just not something that was being covered. There's a lot of different news stories, obviously, from an American angle. So Al Jazeera had decent coverage, but I was checking the Pakistani main newspaper, Dawn, and the last thing I saw was that like after the ceasefire, India had like one more small retaliation in Kashmir. I don't even know if anyone died, but they like made a show of force. But then it held after that. And I was talking with a friend over dinner who's Indian, who lives here in the US. And it was just so funny. We were both laughing because she said, without me saying anything, I heard that Pakistan had one last little incursion into Indian-controlled Kashmir, but it's held since then, which is like the exact flip of what I thought. Like, it just shows, like, I don't know, like how hard it is to untangle. And I'm grateful that so many diaspora communities in the U.S. are able to kind of be like there's no, like, one, we're in diaspora, you know, even if in her case she immigrated here, you know, recently. But two, just I feel like, especially in an American context, there is a lot of camaraderie between Indians and Pakistanis for like obvious reasons. And just like there is like such a recent history there that it is kind of like sad and weird, just like how this.
Don't move your mic around so much.
Sorry, I'm trying to show with my hands, but you can't see me. How this border, like this artificial border, has divided, but is ultimately like historically, I think it's fair to say like one group of people or many groups of people on both sides of the border. But yeah, anyway, that's all I had to say about India, Pakistan. But I did want to mention it.
Yeah. Good thing the ceasefire is held.
Yes. Yeah. So awesome.
It's not good when people fight.
Yeah, that's a good take.
Yeah. Especially when it hurts other people in the process.
True.
Yeah. What was the other? We also talked about
the Fetterman article.
I think we released that one.
No, that was the last one.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Now you have regret.
No. I think we released the Fetterman article episode.
Want me to check? I'm pretty sure no. I think the last one we released was like your Barstool guy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We talked about the Fetterman article. Mm-hmm. We'll see. Okay. Well, the other stuff that we talked about was Trump's trip to the Middle East. So he went to Saudi Arabia. And a lot of hay was made leading up to it, which I suggested on that episode that people should be cautious before jumping to praise Trump for, because the rhetoric had all been around, oh, well, he negotiated a bilateral deal with Yemen or with Ansar Allah that cut out Israel.
And then on the other side, the rhetoric was also that he was able to get like the last American hostage release. So there were also some pro-Israeli camps that were happy with him.
Right. So they were saying that he cut Israel out of this deal and that he was going to negotiate a nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia that also cut Israel out, or, you know, and that he was also going to cut some sort of deal with Iran that, again, also didn't really consider Israel's interests. And so people were speculating, there was so much speculation that he was going to recognize Palestine as a state.
Who was speculating that? I didn't hear that at all.
A lot of people, yes.
Huh. That's not something I saw.
And that you just heard all this talk about Trump is so frustrated with Netanyahu and he's, you know, cutting off ties with Israel, etc., right? And this was talked about almost nonstop in a lot of the media that I've been seeing. And my take was, well, negotiating these deals with Yemen is great. We'll see if he abides by them. That's the thing about Trump that we know, is that he's not a man of his word and that he's a coward. And the only thing that I'll mention that I think is still relevant is that he has given us no reason to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think the standard for praising him should be quite high. And when I say praising him, I think the media sources I'll point to are pretty left, independent media sources that I listen to. So a lot of the podcasts that I listen to, people who will rightly criticize the Democratic Party for just being filled with war hawks who, and they say this of the Democratic Party, and again, I think it's true, is that Democrats will suddenly flip to being just neocon war hawks when Trump is trying to seems to be intimating at wanting the U.S. to be less involved in wars, either in Ukraine or in Palestine or Afghanistan or Syria or whatever, right? And Democrats will suddenly just be like, the U.S. has to be a leader on human rights and all this stuff, and we have to be involved. And I think that's a fair criticism. However, we don't need to be obsequious, or we don't need to jump at the chance to denigrate Democrats or malign Democrats by saying Trump is right and Trump is doing something good, because we don't know what he's doing, because I feel like he doesn't even necessarily know what he's doing half the time. It does not matter what his security cabinet looks like or what they say or how ideological they are. The fact of the matter is that he's constantly changing the way the U.S. does foreign policy and business on a day-to-day basis, and it's
so erratically
to his whims. And one day he could be talking shit about Netanyahu. The next, he's just like Netanyahu's dog and doing whatever Netanyahu wants, and that's what's happening. Like,
I think that's a good point. I was going to say, like, I feel like it's also, I don't know if this is like the media sources that you're looking at or not, but like this reminds me of some of the like Muslims who supported Trump before this election, who were like understandably driven to madness by the Biden-Harris administration, but like doesn't mean that this is necessarily our shining. It definitely does not mean that this is like a better alternative necessarily.
Yeah.
I think it's just as bad of an alternative. And even if it ends up being mildly better than Biden-Harris would have been, it's a wash because so many other things are shit. And like, I'm not even ready to say that it is better. There's no way to know. I mean, the genocide's ongoing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So right now it just seems like more of the same. But I had one more thought in there.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, Israel being cut out is really interesting. It does seem to indicate some kind of shift, but it also hasn't done anything to stop the genocide or, so far, the food blockage. I did hear, who's the guy that we like again who does the podcasts on foreign exchange?
Danny Bessner.
Yeah. I was listening to him this morning, and he was suggesting apparently Israel's letting in aid for like a week, which is also so icky and weird. Like, they're controlling it in this way that like if they do let in the aid, it will only be through them, and it will only be for a week, and there's only going to be distribution centers. So if you like are not well enough to get yourself to a center, which is a considerable amount of the population at this point, like it's not coming to you. You have to get to these centers.
Mm-hmm.
But he was suggesting that even that gesture, maybe because we don't know this, but could be because of like pressure from the Trump administration.
Mm-hmm.
Something the administration does not seem to have moved on yet is like Trump is still talking about annexing Gaza, which is horrific.
He is.
Like he's still talking about this idea of like, we'll take it over, we'll make it a freedom city, which is just like a new form of occupation. I mean,
so now the latest plans that we've seen, I've seen a couple things. But before I get to that, what's been happening since people had this, week and a half or so of just trying to praise Trump for changing the paradigm in Palestine, which again, he has not done. Israel has just absolutely ramped up its efforts. Just sheer unadulterated genocidal language from Netanyahu and every single Israeli politician talking about how they are going to finish the job. Daily bombing campaigns, killing hundreds of people a day, continued starvation of the population. It's just continued to get worse. A weapons shipment from the U.S. to Israel just left from Atlanta's airport, 2 days ago. So we're continuing to support them. So Trump, no matter how much he has paid some lip service to saying, people are starving there and we got to do what's right and we're going to do something, has done absolutely nothing. So I just don't understand what we have to gain by trying to stick it to the Democrats by prematurely praising Trump. Let's at least wait until he actually does something and not just hint at it, because when he just hints at it and then you jump at the chance to hurt Democrats by praising Trump, it just makes you look stupid. Like, it just, like, honestly, like, you look foolish. I get it. I hate Democrats just as much as everyone else who's been doing this, and I also want something to hope in and want there to be some change or relief for Palestinians, but we have no reason to believe it's going to come from Trump.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is the plans that have been floated have been almost like a 50% reduction in like Gaza's original territory. So
I mean the Israeli plans, because it's also been
So the Israeli plan is to essentially create a buffer zone that spans the length of Gaza, and then create like 3 military buffer zones or military zones within it, occupation zones that are pretty large. So they're just pushing the population into non-contiguous 3 non-contiguous zones that are separated by military buffer zones.
Into 3 camps, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially 3 concentration camps. So a much smaller area. And then I think this is America's plan, is to ethnically cleanse and displace 1 million Gazans to Libya.
Yeah, the American plan is like less concrete. It's just like Trump saying things on the fly. Like he has said a Libyan thing out loud, whereas the Israeli plan, it does seem like there's actual like blueprints for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, if you ask me today, what I guess is going to happen, my guess is the Israeli plan, just because it's
just a continuation of what they've already been doing.
It's easier for them. The U.S. doesn't have to do much. Yeah, and right, it's a continuation of what they've been doing. And I think Trump is happy to let Netanyahu manage the situation.
We'll see.
So yeah, it's disgusting, and now all these mainstream media sources are starting to report on it a little bit more. But
it's super interesting that the tide is finally turning, but it's kind of like, I mean, I don't know why now. It's not as if it hasn't been a really dire situation for a long time. I do think cynically a little bit of it is because it's easier to, we talked about this before, it's easier for them to critique Trump than it was like now that it's a Trump administration, and it's maybe easier to be like, the situation is dire.
Yeah.
But I think also just like there's been just such like ghastly footage of like emaciated children. But I mean, again, unfortunately, even that is not new. So I don't really know why it's just right.
Because they don't have
hair
nutrients.
Yeah. I don't know why it's just turning now in mainstream outlets. Yeah. It's definitely, unfortunately, not like, these aren't really new developments. They are awful developments, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw testimony from a doctor essentially saying that they are, people are trying to go to wherever doctors are now because they think that they'll at least be safe. And Israel's just targeting doctors.
But I mean, even that is not new. I mean, they've been shelling hospitals for a while. Yeah. I saw a clip that was circulating of this guy on television in Israel who was just like kind of bragging that like, 100 Palestinians died last night and like no one cares anymore, or like it's kind of like this suffering has become so naturalized.
This is a politician in Israel. Yeah, I saw the same thing. Yeah.
One other thought on the Trump Middle East trip. There was a lot made of, and this is moving away from Palestine a little bit, if that's all right. Was there more you wanted to say on that?
No.
Yeah. It's hard. There doesn't feel like there's a lot more. I wish that there was more like good developments to share. There was a lot made of like Qatar saying that they were going to give like a huge jet or something to Trump, like a huge plane.
Yep.
And like, yes, it is kind of awkward and like seems like a pretty direct form of bribery. But I think the weird thing that I find about it in terms of like the media reporting on it as if like the US doesn't have so many like constrained foreign interests already. Like, yes, like this is kind of like a very like bold, obvious gesture that is highly visible. But like so much of our foreign policy is dictated obviously by our national interests or whoever's in power deems to be what our national security interests are. And even like on a highly local level, like our entire congressional system is just dictated essentially by lobbying groups. Like our entire system is built on bribery essentially. So it just felt weird to have it reported on as if it was this like groundbreaking thing. And I should have pulled it up, but Linda Sarsour, who's a really wonderful Palestinian American activist, she was saying essentially this, like, please stop pretending that you're like fainting into your sheets kind of thing. Like, this is not new. And the breathless coverage and the fact that like, kind of honestly is getting a lot more coverage still than even like the situation in Palestine, I think is kind of silly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like, yay, Qatari bribes, you know what I mean? But I'm also just like, it's not that distinctive. It's not like Biden didn't have like conflicting interests abroad, you know?
Right. I mean, it makes sense that they would try to give him something like that just because he's, you know, really buddying up with MBS. But yeah, I mean, I think you can point to all the money that Nancy Pelosi has made, insider trading, like a lot of these politicians go into office and you can look at their net worth when they're first elected and then just have a look at their net worth when they're either currently or leaving office, and even after they leave, just how quickly their net worth increases. It's not a mystery why that's happening. It's because they are all taking bribes. It's just that Trump is just more obvious about it. It's very explicit. I think also having a token, right? Like a physical token of the gift.
It's very cartoonish,
being the plane, right? Like this is almost like the Bob Menendez gold bars.
Right, exactly.
And that it's somewhat refreshing because usually it's, we'll, you know, give you this position, or, you know, they do some like circuitous thing where we'll donate to your nonprofit where you're on the board and you get paid, like, you know, some convoluted scheme. So to have a $400 million plane, and he's kind of like, oh, well, you know, we'll make it Air Force One, and then after we'll donate it to the presidential library. But yeah, it takes years to make a plane Air Force One. They have to strip it apart and, you know, kind of rebuild the plane.
I would imagine, especially in this case, they have to really make sure that it's like clean. Like, God forbid it was like bugged or something, you know, like,
yeah. Anyway,
I thought that was funny.
That was honestly, I agree with you. That was the least of my concerns from that trip.
But it was definitely the thing that got the most media coverage. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I don't have anything else on that. Do you?
No. Do you have any more foreign news? I've got a local story.
Foreign news.
Foreign news is a funny category. News abroad.
No, I don't.
I just wanted to draw attention. I haven't been following the story that closely, but there's a black man named Rodney Hinton Jr. Who killed a police officer after his son was killed by the police. I think it's getting some coverage, which is good. A couple people have pointed out, and I agree with them, that it should probably be getting more coverage because it almost is kind of like a Luigi, what was that guy's name again? Mangione kind of story of like just like something really broken in our system. I mean, in this case, it was even more direct, right? I mean, he was directly impacted in terms of like an institution taking his life of a family member.
Sure, yeah.
And as we all know, in the U.S., people in general dying of police brutality, but especially Black people, and especially in a lot of cases, young Black men, is just like a pattern that we've all grown up watching horrifically play out again and again.
You gotta speak up.
Oh, sorry. And yeah, I mean, I should have said it. It's alleged. You know, it could have been an accident that he killed the police officer with his car. So whether or not that was intentional or whether it was an accident is not clear. But it's clear when he's appeared in court that he's being like horrifically beaten by the police. Like he's visibly bruised. And it's just like, I don't know. I mean, it's obvious, but just like a reminder that like the police are really just like a bunch of like thugs. Like they're kind of just like a mafia group. Like they really are. Like they're just like, this guy is not safe because the institution that like has the backing of the state, like he's in their custody. And there's such a crazy kind of like fraternal code that because one police officer is down, like this, I mean, I hope he like is able to live through the trial. Like it's a little scary in that way too. But yeah, I mean, don't want to make light of anyone's death. And also, of course, now there's reporting that like the son who was killed had stolen a car and had a gun on him. Like who gives a shit? Like he didn't deserve to be murdered by the police. Like, you know, like I feel like there's always this attempt to like almost justify the taking of a life. One, have seen no reporting yet that the son like tried to shoot a police officer. And even if he had, the theoretical idea that doesn't exist in reality is that the police are supposed to be well trained and they're supposed to do everything possible not to take a life. And they shot this man in the back while he was running away, as they always fucking do. And again, there's been no documented evidence that he shot the police. So even if he had a gun on him, he probably knew better than to use it and was trying to stay alive. And like, you know, being a young man who made a mistake and stole a car, again, shouldn't be a death sentence. It's not for a number of other people.
Yeah. It's always interesting when people, I mean, they did this with George Floyd, just saying that he had a criminal history. He was on drugs or whatever, and essentially trying to diminish his character so much as to dehumanize him and create permission to, you know, for his murder. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that people, when they talk about the values or, you know, why the U.S. is so exceptional and great is that it's a place where freedom is a value and also where people aren't where people can have justice done, right? And the whole idea of justice or the justice system is not that it rewards the best of us for like the best behavior or even dispenses punishment to the worst of us. It's that it protects even the alleged wrongdoers from overreach of the state, right? That's the idea of American freedom, is that people are protected from overreach of whatever legal and like punitive systems there are.
Absolutely. And on that point, it's also such a good reminder that like any of us, if the state so chose, could make like to be a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Like none of us has, you know, like I think it's so easy when you see certain media portrayals or sort of certain state influence portrayals to just be like, well, this person wasn't one of the good ones, but like that could easily be you too. Like,
well, yeah. And I want to connect this to what's happening with, because if you can allow for that to be done to Hinton's son, then you can allow it to be done to Mahmoud Khalil and to Ramesa Ozturk and whatever, right? So it's one day it's, you know, oh, well, they stole a car or they were running away or they looked sketchy.
They flinched.
I don't like the way that they talked, or they wrote this op-ed, or, you know, they're here illegally even though he's not, right? Or they didn't have documents on them, right? You can invent any number of things. And if we allow state overreach in this one case, then we allow it in all others, and they are connected. And
it's like a very circular logic. Like essentially the person is already being convicted before they're tried. Like, yeah.
I don't want to reduce this down to identitarian things, but just how it feels to be Arab. And I'm not Palestinian, right? So I don't even want to make it seem like I am in the least bit like the most distressed in the situation. But it is distressing to see so much justification for a violent, aggressive state. So much of that justification being made on, the backs of finding people who are Arab or Palestinian or Muslim or have certain political beliefs. And just this kind of feeling that the state whose control and jurisdiction you're under is just so antagonistic and violent toward you, and this like sense of occupation almost within the country in which you live, right? Like we talk about how the whole concept of the imperial boomerang and this state, like the chickens coming home to roost, etc. It's here and it starts somewhere, and it seems, or does, I don't think it started with Arabs, but certainly it is being targeted at Arabs. Anyway, all that to say, I feel like Black men in particular have been living this reality for a long time. And the distressing part of constantly watching the state who your tax dollars go to has this internal occupation force that seems indifferent to your humanity, and even at times seems to delight in ripping apart your body or killing you, and then punishes you for speaking out. It's a suffocating, crazying thing to just live through. And I think, it's been the case for decades here in the US, especially, again, I say for Black men. And it's definitely something that I think comes to a head and like really, really is probably acutely felt during moments like Mike Brown and George Floyd and Tamir Rice. And it's not like I wasn't at the protests in 2020 after George, but like I don't think I understood it as intimately. And I just want people to kind of think about that as they either go to protests or think through these issues. It's not just you, right? Like you should hopefully feel connected to other people in that struggle and understand the pain that they've been through with a little bit more intimacy, I suppose. I don't know. That's all I have to say.
Right. The state seems like infinitely capable of sort of cannibalizing more and more groups of people. And historically, kind of looking at American history, there have been periods of like greater acceptance or lesser acceptance, but like a horrific constant does seem to be not just does seem to be, but like historically has been subjugation of Black Americans. So yeah, I think definitely both like a horror, but also in terms of thinking about like incredible legacies of resistance, something to really like learn from and to think about connections between communities and overlaps in some cases between communities. Yeah. And like I really was resonating with what you were saying earlier about, right, like then it becomes like you wrote an op-ed, or just like to not be too comfortable in your safeness, because for better, well, for worse, but maybe for better in the case that like you may have skin in the game you don't even realize. like no one is really off limits from state violence, particularly like in dying moments of empire. Yeah. So
okay, what else? What do you got?
That was it. I don't know where else to go from there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of one Black man in particular with whom I no longer have solidarity is Kanye West.
Oh no.
Was that a good segue? No. Oh, okay, that was a bad segue. I'll have to rework that.
It wasn't bad, but I'm saying oh no to the topic. You said you would do this one with a guest and not with me.
No. I wanted to bring it up just because I feel like it's...
You've been a Kanye West apologist historically? No, you haven't actually.
Well, no, I don't apologize. I just
you gave him the benefit of the doubt. You appreciate his music.
Yes, that's exactly it. I don't think listening to someone's music necessarily means you give them benefit of the doubt or think they're a good person. But
no, I agree. It's complicated. I mean, there's some things that we're boycotting, obviously, but we do partake in some movies and TV shows that we know are made by Zionists.
But even that's getting a little rough too, because I actually haven't listened to any of his most recent albums that I previously listened to since he dropped. I don't know if we can say it. Oh, it's not like we get monetized. So anyway, Kanye West, I think everyone knows at this point, dropped a track called Hail Hitler, and it was removed from every streaming platform, but I think he was able to
That's good. I didn't know
release
that.
it on X, but I don't know if it's still up on X.
Well, it's a cesspool. I'm not surprised.
And then he released a music video for it, which I have also not seen, but it just seems like what he is trying to do is be as edgy as possible, because he has this like Jesus, I mean, it's obvious from like his album titles about like Jesus and like God is king and all this stuff. He has this like Jesus complex or savior complex that he is being persecuted for speaking too much truth, right?
My man, you make too much money to be persecuted.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, yeah, he's been vilified in the media, Obama, whatever. He was really hurt when Obama got up on, and called him a jackass. And
I didn't follow this. Interesting.
This was after the Taylor Swift thing forever ago. This is, when he interrupted Taylor Swift at the Grammys. That whole thing.
I remember that. I still remember Obama commenting.
And then SNL made fun of him and everyone was making fun of him. Anyway, so that seems to have really stuck with him. But he's got this point that he wants to prove, that there are people out there who are trying to silence him because he is so uniquely capable of speaking the truth, and that's the light he brings into this world, and that he, at no cost will he allow that to be diminished. And so I think he sees what he's doing as a spiritual battle, but that is something a narcissist tells themselves when they just want to do the thing that they want to do for no real rational reason, right? Because Kanye West could, with his platform, say free Palestine. He could put out a song that says, following all the free speech persecution that is happening on college campuses. But the
as our own, what's his name did, Macklemore.
Yeah. Yeah. And anyway, so it's just corny. It's really corny shit. And it's not edgy. It doesn't feel like it is making the point that I think he wants to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think he definitely seems to be a narcissist, and I guess these two things may be related in his case. He's also like bipolar, maybe unmedicated. And that's not an excuse for his actions, because he is choosing to not get help and choosing to just kind of fuel his delusions. And I mean, I think, he's got a lot of artistic talent, but that doesn't excuse being a shit person. And also, like, there are real world consequences. And obviously Kanye West is not the only person, and there's Elon Musk, another high profile example. But like, when you have a platform and you demonize a group of people, it's just irresponsible.
Yeah.
And
sure. Yeah. Whether he is or is not, in his heart of hearts feels antipathy toward all Jews or whatever, is irrelevant. Because when you act at that scale, the outcome is that people
I think we've talked about this before, but like, I don't find that question super, like, just for myself personally, like, there's no way to know someone's heart. Like, all I can know are your actions. So like, your actions are anti-Semitic, therefore you're anti-Semitic. Like, like you are demonstrating hatred, consistent hatred, and targeting towards a group of people in a way that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole, like, do you separate the art for the artist thing is complicated though. Like, I don't want to take away from that. Like, I'll listen to Kanye occasionally to like older songs. I don't think I hope I don't get canceled for this, but I can't think of a single thing that I've actually completely stopped partaking in because someone was a bad person morally. There definitely are like products from companies that I've boycotted, but I can't think of like individuals. I do cringe when I hear Chris Brown songs, and I was never attached to them, so I never choose to listen to a Chris Brown song, you know? Now with all the like really awful, the like Diddy trial. What's Diddy's name again?
Sean Combs.
Yeah. But I don't even remember, like I can't think of a Diddy song that I've listened. I don't know. I guess I'm saying it's not like I would never listen to Kanye in terms of like especially his older music, but I'm glad that people are turning on him in the contemporary present moment.
Yeah. Yeah, like, there are better ways to make the point about free speech and truth than to
be an anti-Semite. Yeah,
do that. Yeah.
Like we're watching Last of Us, and that's like another interesting question, I guess, with like art and the artist. Like I don't know if he is a Zionist, but like the creator grew up in Israel, was inspired by thinking about Israel in terms of like constant cycles of retribution between groups of people, which is like kind of depressing to think about watching the second season. And I know some people aren't watching it for that reason. We are watching it. I don't know. Yeah. Where do you draw the line?
I don't know. Actually,
I think for me it's at companies and not people. Like,
I'll further complicate it.
Yeah.
Because speaking of anti-Semitic companies, so a couple of things happened on X. One is that a couple weeks ago or a week ago or so, it just wouldn't stop talking about white genocide, and that anytime someone asked it something, it would add an addendum about white genocide. And
when they asked, like, even if it wasn't related to the topic.
Yeah, so I have an example here of...
Wait, do you still have your X account? Speaking of boycotting...
No, I deleted it.
I did delete mine after Elon did his fucking Heil Hitler salute. I deleted it because I was like, I can't support this man. I fucking hate him.
Yeah. I had it up. Where did it go?
But are you still able to see it, even if you're not on it?
Yeah, because I'm looking at a news story.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the Afrikaners being here is so fucking embarrassing. Like, yes, there are more serious things happening, but it's also like such an embarrassing historical footnote.
Yeah. So someone here, just context, someone asked Grok, which is X's AI, a question, because HBO has been branding and rebranding and changing its name. So it was like HBO, and then it was HBO Max, and now it's Max, and now it's changing back to HBO Max. I'm not sure. Anyway, someone asked Grok, how many times has HBO changed their name? Grok's reply, HBO's streaming service has changed names twice since 2020, from HBO Max to Max in 2023, and back to HBO Max in 2025. Earlier services like HBO Go and HBO Now existed but are distinct. The rebranding reflects corporate strategies, not consumer demand. Regarding white genocide in South Africa, some claim it's real, citing farm attacks and kill the boar as evidence. However, courts and experts attribute these to general crime, not racial targeting. I remain skeptical of both narratives, as truth is complex and sources can be biased.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. That's so awkward and stupid, but that's so funny.
Yeah.
When stuff like this happens, you're just like, what a stupid timeline. This is so silly.
Yeah. So there's like a Rolling Stone article about it, and how apparently there was just a unauthorized code change to the prompting of the AI that made it not be able to not talk about white genocide, really.
It just like was so deeply compelled.
Yeah, and like you said, it kind of coincided with these South African asylum seekers who came to this great country for salvation, but they
I hope they end up in like the most bumblefuck, shittiest parts of America, the like all white towns that are like just. I mean, I don't want to be rude, obviously, but let me stop. But I just hope they have miserable times here, as so many others do.
I say send them to Denton, North Carolina.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Is Denton mostly white? I mean, the Klan would suggest that, but is it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For not long-time listeners, Denton is the place that Ahmed and I were driving through once. And this guy was like giving like a little, what seemed like a religious sermon on the side of the road. And I'm interested in religion. So Ahmed rolled down the window and then we heard him say, Heil Hitler.
Well, I think he was just singing the new Kanye song.
And then Ahmed
was going to drop 5 years from then.
And then Ahmed rolled it back up and we kept on speeding away. And it turns out they have like an active Klan chapter.
Well, it doesn't turn out. I knew that since high school.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'd never been to Denton, North Carolina before.
Yeah.
But I have to say, would not recommend. But maybe for the Afrikaners, it'll be a good place. Yeah. And they can go shop at Walmart and wander around the mall.
There's no mall anymore. But anyway, so the immediate question is, if you know anything about how tech companies are structured and how hard it is to make a code change and release a code change to production, then immediately red flags should be going off in your head when the statement that X has put out has said, oh, someone made an unauthorized code change. Literally no one can do that in a company unless you have an immense amount of power in that company.
Especially one in which like seems to be kind of like Elon Musk's personal toy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's either him or
the white guy from South Africa who owns the company. How could it be?
And also can't stop talking about great replacement theory or even the white genocide. I mean, his dad is on fucking interviews crying about white genocide and how awful it is. But yeah, so it's either him or he's looking over the developer of the shoulder of a senior developer and making him commit these changes to production. And X came out and said that it'd be putting more regulations in place to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen. But since that, Grok has also started to, according to Rolling Stone, dabble in Holocaust denial, saying that it is skeptical of the consensus among historians that 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust and that numbers can be manipulated. It has also said that there is notable academic debate about whether that many Jews died as a result of the Nazi genocide. So that's been
terrifying.
It went from doing white genocide to
doing Holocaust denial.
Denial.
That's freaking terrifying. That's
so
awful.
Yeah, I guess the question is, what is the difference between a Kanye's Hail Hitler song and then, something like Elon Musk's X, or the AI, which is disseminating as much information and people are actually going to it for information.
What do you mean? What is the difference? I feel like this is saying like if someone was like shouting Islamophobic slurs on the like sidewalk versus like if a politician was doing it, like there might be different ways they're accessing power, but they're both Islamophobic. Like I don't really. What do you mean? They're both anti-Semitic. What's the difference?
Yeah,
like I'm
rhetorically asking what is the difference?
Like the power differential.
No, I'm not I'm not actually asking you what the difference is.
Oh, I thought you were asking me in a way like you were interested in my thoughts about it. But I agree.
I am interested in your thoughts about it, but I'm asking what is the difference to suggest that there is no difference.
I see.
Yes.
Gotcha. I mean, I guess like Kanye doesn't have a platform like X, but he does have a lot of people who follow him, and he's probably on X.
Well, I mean, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, again, there is no difference.
I see. I got you now. I'm
okay.
on board.
I'm not saying there's a difference between the two. I think they are both being anti-Semitic.
You're making the viewers think and then realize, not the viewers, the listeners, that there is no difference.
Yeah. Okay. You're a little sleepy.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I understand.
Okay.
I have understanding.
But I mean, yeah, if we're saying, we boycott, the companies and not people, I would. It's scary how much people are using AI uncritically and they're going to it. And in this case, AI is clearly just, and what people consume as fact is so subject to the whims of this one idiot.
Yeah, I guess adding on to that, this kind of raises the point that like in our current world, companies are sort of, or people are companies sometimes, like just because they've amassed so much money and wealth. I guess it's a little bit more of a nuanced question. If like the artist has died and it's like, well, Picasso was a misogynist. Do you like his paintings? Like that's a little bit different, I guess, than like someone like Kanye, who's like still very much ticking.
And Kanye has said, he's like, oh man, I don't know about the 6 million Jews dying thing, right? And people freak out and they say, Kanye, what an awful anti-Semitic thing to say. And then now Grok, Elon Musk's AI, is doing the same thing. And sure, people are laughing at it and it's being covered in the media, but it's not being covered in the media through the lens of this is anti-Semitism.
I feel like I've seen a lot of coverage of Elon being anti-Semitic. I think the thing that does complicate it is that he like is also anti-Palestinian, and so like for some very specific super Zionist groups, there's like a kind of like enemy of my enemy kind of alliance there.
Yeah.
But I feel like most coverage I've seen is pretty critical.
It's critical, but it doesn't present it as this is what anti-Semitism
really
is.
I feel like I'm sure it does.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd be interested to read those pieces, specifically about the AI, because I know people have covered him actually giving the Nazi salute,
right? Yeah,
through that lens.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I think him disseminating this information, again, this is like a platform with tens of millions of users.
I mean, I think the general consensus is that X is kind of just like a far right cesspool now, I kind of, side note, not related, I really miss Twitter. Not what it's become, but Blue Sky is just not catching on in the same way. And it used to be such a cool like resource. I mean, it was a resource for so many little niche fields, but like in academia, you could like ask a question and people would like send you articles. And there's no place for that anymore. It's really sad. You have to hit up like 7 different group chats to source something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss it. R.I.P.
Yeah. That's sad. Well, last thing I have is that Joe Biden has ass cancer. So I hope it eats his insides and is painful.
You're going to get us in trouble, but that's fair.
There's an article from Thomas Friedman, or an opinion piece by Thomas Friedman about
show favorite
about Joe Biden's ass cancer.
What does he say? What's his take on that?
It's really short, so I'm just going to read a bit of it.
Okay.
Again, this guy writes 200-word columns and gets paid so much money.
I know. I feel like we could do his job so easily. The world is so unjust.
Also, down at the bottom, his author bio, apparently he's won 3 Pulitzer Prizes. Did you know this?
God. I mean,
for what?
I'm not surprised, but yeah, that is funny.
For what? That's crazy.
Turning out 200 words a week, baby.
He said, Joe Biden called me out of the title is My First Thought When I Heard Joe Biden's News, written May 19th, 2025. So fresh off the press. Joe Biden called me out of the blue last month. Something was on his mind. It was a few weeks before he went in for tests on the small nodule found in his prostate and received the tough diagnosis that was released publicly on Sunday. Mr. President, what's up? I asked as I stepped outside a DC restaurant to hear better, leaving my family at the dinner table. What was up? That seems like an error. It's just a sentence. What was up? Question. But it's not in quotes. Okay. He wanted to talk about the future of the NATO alliance. Okay. So this is crazy to me that Joe Biden is like delirious and randomly calls Thomas Friedman to talk about NATO, and he's just advising on NATO. And also, what is Joe Biden going to do about NATO at this point?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like it smacks of him having one of his like total brain shutdowns and just mashing numbers on his jitterbug phone
until it not dials, the jitterbug phone
until it dials.
My grandparents had that.
Well, someone needs to take Joe Biden's away, especially if it still has Thomas Friedman in it. He told me he was planning to give a speech to remind people how incredibly valuable the Atlantic Alliance has been over the decades to preserve world peace and prosperity, and how crazy it is to think that the Trump administration and its congressional allies would risk breaking it up. He wanted to bat around some ideas. So, yeah, he's just calling in the middle of the night. I bet the conversation was like, hey, Thomas, why a kangaroo wear boxing gloves when he hops and kicks, but he got gloves on, you know?
Yeah, it's a pretty good Joe Biden.
And you got, who are you?
And then Thomas Friedman extrapolated from this what he actually was asking about. They said they found
a bump on my ass, and I said, listen, fat, that ain't no bump. That's, back in the day, we call that a... But anyway, so he was supposed to call him back, but then Thomas says he suspects that cancer got in the way. What I found funny, I'm going to ignore most of this because it's all bullshit, and I'm going to just scroll down to the last paragraph. He's talking about how Joe Biden just had like a really good instinct for what America's place and in the world should be, and how good he was at articulating it. But given that Thomas Friedman now knows that there is cancer eating away at Joe Biden's insides, I just find this particular wording a little funny. We will miss his gut when it's gone.
Oh, Ahmed.
That's Thomas Friedman. So, Mr. President, I'm wishing you a speedy recovery. He says, so, Mr. President, I'm wishing you a speedy recovery. No matter how soft your voice or unstable your gait or weak your heart.
Oh my God, that's so mean.
You have the gut instincts of a healthy 20-year-old when it comes to articulating what America's mission in the world must always be. We need to hear that. The world needs to hear that now more than ever. So yeah, if I was his editor, I'd be like, hey, we know there's cancer, just, wreaking havoc.
Very close to the gut region.
Wreaking havoc. Probably has metastasized, spreading around. Maybe let's not say his gut is going to be gone. There's probably 1,000 other ways to convey that meaning.
Yeah, I don't think this is the intention, but it almost seems like a mean Valley Girl, hope you get better while you die.
Yeah, right. Just a little bit.
It's funny.
Anyway, that's all I wanted to pull out of that piece.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, it is funny because people are now talking about, we've been watching West Wing, and one of the big cover-ups in that is that the president had MS, and a lot of people are being impeached, or he's being impeached, and they dragged people for testimonial and all that stuff because of the cover-up. But now people are saying that there was a pretty involved cover-up in the cancer stuff as well, not just the mental.
Who knows? But I definitely wouldn't be surprised if there was, just because they tried to cover so much else up about his mental state and his physical health.
Yeah. Well, I would say best wishes, but I truly don't mean it, and I hope it's what you deserve.
Best wishes to all listeners.
Except Joe Biden, if you're listening to this.
That's true.
I hope your ice cream melts just like your insides.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.